locked inside. Love is a river that flows through. Love never fails you. Love will sustain. Love will provide. And love will not cease at the end of time. Love will protect. And love always hopes. And love still believes when you don't. Love is the arms that are holding you. Love never fails you. When my heart won't make a sound, when I can't turn back around, when the sky is falling down, nothing is greater than this, greater than this. Love is right here, and love is alive, and love is the way, the truth, the life, and love is a river that flows through. Love is the arms that are holding you, and love is a place you will fly to. Love never fails you.
Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he that made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations.
Me and God have been talking again. It's too soon to call us friends. He still won't carry the weight of the world, just keeps listing off all my sins. Me and God have been laughing again. It's always funny reading passages, but he's still quiet at least half of the time, and I'm left with unread messages. So many voices shouting, so much noise. I'm not listening anymore. Me and God have been singing again. I play piano and try to follow him. It's always songs about glory and pain, I prefer the instrumental hymns. Ooh, so many voices shouting, so much noise. I'm not listening anymore. Be better, live smarter, go further in less time, change faster, hurt harder. Don't let a single day go by. Me and God have been fighting again, but I'm too tired to make amends. So I count the dead while he prays by his bed for forgiveness and the rain to end. There's just so much I'll never understand, but I know for sure can't stop listening.
When the Son of Man comes in a reading from Matthew 25:31 to 46. When the Son of Man in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me any clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Word of the Lord.
Brother Moon, you shine down your light on us tonight. Show us the love of God. Sister Sun, you bring out the day. You're shining the light of God on your face today. Maker of it all, you provide it all. In you we live, in you we move, in you we have our being. You're glorious, you're holding us together, all together. Brother wind, your clouds and your storms, you're breathing the breath of God in your lungs for us. Mother Earth, you're giving us life with God's open hand. You always provide for us. Maker of it all, you provide it all. In you we live, in you we move, in you we have
Reading from Ezekiel 34, beginning at verse 11. For thus says the Lord God, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out. As shepherds seek out their flocks when they are among the scattered sheep, so I will seek out my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places to which they have been scattered on a day of clouds and thick darkness. I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries, and will bring them into their own land, and I will feed them on the mountains of Israel, by the watercourses, and in all the inhabited parts of the land. I will feed them with good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel shall be their pasture. There they shall lie down in good grazing land, and they shall feed on the rich pasture on the mountain of Israel. I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep, and I will make them lie down, says the Lord God. I will seek the lost. I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak. But the fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them with justice. As for you, my flock, thus says the Lord God, I shall judge between sheep and sheep, between rams and goats. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture, but you must tread down the rest of the pasture with your feet? When you drink of the clear water, must you foul the rest with your feet? And must my sheep eat what you have trodden with your feet, and drink what you have fouled with your feet? Therefore, thus says the Lord God to them, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you pushed with the flank and the shoulder, and butted all the weak animals with your horns, until you scattered them far and wide. I will save my flock, and they shall no longer be ravaged, and I will judge between sheep and sheep. I will set up over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he shall feed them. He shall feed them and be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David shall be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken.
Good morning. I'd like to bring you an update on the work that Hope is doing. First, I'll explain a little bit about how the research process works generally, and then I'll give you some more information about the work that we're doing this year. In between the annual convention and Nehemiah Action, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. Research committees meet for each of the 4 issues that Hope is currently focusing on. Can anyone name these issues? Yes. These are all issues that are very broad and multifaceted, and some of the solutions need to be addressed on a state or even national level. What Hope works to do is consult with area experts to identify very specific solutions that can be implemented on a local level and are within the power of local decision makers. Then we meet with these decision makers to educate them on the issues and solutions and ask them to commit to action. We focus our efforts by sticking with the same issue campaign until we win. This takes persistence and often does not happen quickly. The $10 million Hope Affordable Housing Fund took 7 years of hard work before it was added to the county budget, and as you know, it is still hard work to keep it funded each year. This year, I will be working with the Mental Health and Addiction Committee. What we are asking for is for 500 additional units of permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing pairs affordable housing with on-site case management for people living with severe mental health diagnosis. This case management is a very important part of this because it makes sure that residents have access to other resources available to them, such as transportation and healthcare. We know that this works as a solution to help people with severe mental illness to live more stable lives. It reduces homelessness, ER visits, and unnecessary interactions with law enforcement. The eviction rate for permanent supportive housing is very low, just 0 to 5%. So we know that this is something that works. On Thursday, December 7th, Hope will be meeting with County Commissioner Owen. He is one of the commissioners who led the effort to remove money from the $10 million fund this year, but he has agreed to meet with us. At the same time as this meeting, we'll be holding a prayer vigil that I'd like to invite you to attend. The purpose of this prayer vigil is twofold. Of course, on a spiritual level, we will be gathering with others to pray for what we want, but this is also a very intentional strategy to bring public attention to our issue using the media, and that puts pressure on local decision makers. We know that we have power in numbers and can use this to create change. When the public sees us show up for what is important to us, it makes an impact. If you look in your bulletin, you will see this event and other prayer vigils that are scheduled, and I hope that you will find one that you can attend. If you have more questions about the work that Hope does, or you'd like to get more involved, you can talk to myself or Destra or Chris. Thank you.
I'm already planning on going, and I'm all excited again. So off of that, I'm going to piggyback off of that and say first that the younger children will be dismissed into their class. I wasn't going to say that, but Fallon was doing this. I was going to say I'm going to piggyback off that and talk about this new format here. You like this, bulletin? Yeah. So you'll see each week what the children will be doing, right? So there's no confusion on, like, are we dismissing or are we not? Because I may not say it every week, right? But you'll know ahead of time. Of course, the prayers in there, but then upcoming events, right? So you see those hope events, those prayer vigils that are, like, hugely important for us to attend if we can. Some of those are during the day, but some are going to be in the evening. You'll also see upcoming on the 10th is the church-wide Christmas party at Tim and Jerry's house. Yeah, it's going to be fun, so get that in your calendars. And as we go on, you'll see different events in this. So I can announce them from here. We can text each other. We can whatever. I'm also going to do a screen thing in the beginning, right? So you'll see those going forward. But everyone gets one of these, right? Every week, if you're here, you have one of these in your hand. It's kind of like a foolproof way of making sure everyone at least had access to the information. So don't just throw it immediately in the trash. At least add it to your calendar and then throw it in the trash. Or maybe you don't throw it in the trash because look at this back page. Notes. Wow. Look at that. Maybe you take notes. What's that on the bottom of the back page? Oh, instructions if you'd like to contribute financially to our work. There you go. I always get told I need to say that, and there's a way to do it. Also, if you have things you'd like to put in here, reminders, right? You'll notice that little don't forget section. Let Amelia know about family camp. The adult 10 o'clock hour is reading The Cloud of Unknowing, right? I'm not going to go through all those every week, but I'm just showing you that little section's in there too. Maybe it's not an upcoming event. Maybe it's like, hey, remember, we've got this going on as well. So if you have something you want to put in there, let me know. Debbie already gave me one. She said, can you let people know that I will field prayer requests and kind of build a list, and we can keep each other in our thoughts that way. So yeah, keep on this and know this is a way we can interact with each other. How's everyone this week? Wow, you're all good. What a week. Well, yeah, there we go. Go Knowles. I'm not supposed to do that, but I just did. Did you enjoy Thanksgiving? Wow, man. You're either all really in a good place or you're lying. I hope that you got to either see family, enjoy food, or maybe enjoyed quiet time with a small group, or even yourself. I don't know what Thanksgiving means for you, right? It could be different for all of us. But I do know, I'd be willing to bet, that Thanksgiving signals something for all of us. And that is, it's a reminder that we are almost through another year. Man, right? I'm not always the one that says, because it can be cliche, and I don't always feel it honestly, like, man, this year went by fast. But I will say that this year I did feel that way. I don't know if you had that experience. I told Caleb the other day, it's actually more than just that the year went by fast, right? It's actually even more than that for me. I was telling Caleb that, you could point to any day this year, and it could have been any other day, right? Like you could say something in January happened last week, and I'd be like, yeah, that feels right. You could tell me something that happened last week happened in like January, and I'd be like, yeah, that's probably right. Like it's all just a blur. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way or not. Maybe from time to time you feel like it. But the reason I bring that up is that next week is the first week of Advent, which means that today is the final week of the church year, the church calendar. Most of us, I'm aware, don't measure our year by the liturgical calendar, do we? For some of us, the year is broken up into quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. For some of us, the year moves from first semester to second semester and the corresponding breaks. For some of us, the year is simply January through December. And for some of us, like I said, maybe we don't even know what day or month it is at any given time. And we're floating through the year waiting for God knows what. We can feel often swept along by life or pushed through life through systems and structures that we didn't necessarily choose to be a part of. And so it's important, I think, to find those things that root us, to give us solid places to plant our feet. Things that can give us the ability to take intentional steps through our lives. So the upcoming season of preparing for Christmas, it's not the beginning of a new movement for many of us. Many of us feel like it's not the beginning of a new movement, but is the final cap to the end of the year. But I do think there is something beautiful, if we can see it, about ordering our lives around the movement of Christian liturgy. When you think about it, that's what Sunday is meant to do for us on a micro scale, right? That yearly movement holds the same purpose on a large way that the weekly small movement does for us on a small scale, right? That is, it gives us a sense of place. It roots us. In our movement through time, it gives us a certain way of being in the world. It reminds us of our goals as a community of people who are seeking to testify to love's redeeming and revolutionizing power. Moving through the year in a liturgical way allows us to break or to rupture other cycles of time that are given to us. Right? The ones where maybe we're nothing more than a number on someone else's bottom line, or cogs in a wheel of a heartless machine. Liturgy can be our chance to see the cracks in the views of time that see time as money and seek to squeeze every ounce of value out of time that is spent. This is not the view of time presented to us in our church calendar, is it? In the church calendar, the year begins with the beginning of the life of Jesus, right? His birth, and it moves through the time of his work, and the time of his death, and the time of his resurrection, and then the time of his new life within the community of faith, Christ's new body. We move through times of focus on what that means for us to be that presence, that life of Christ in the world. And we are reminded of the future that compels us forward as we live into that future right now in the present. And then we do it all again. Right? 3 cycles, years A, B, and C. And while at the practical level, right, the purpose of this partly is that we are exposed to the breadth of scriptural texts over those 3 years, I think it speaks to us existentially as well. We cycle through the years, repeating the same things over and over. But it's not a purely cyclical movement of time, right? We revolve over and over through the seasons, but it's not just the pointless spinning of like a teacup ride, right? It's spinning in a circle like this. It's the movement of a wheel. Yes, the bottom comes back to the top, but it's because it's moving forward. The church calendar is the wheel we ride as we move towards a world of good and right and equity and justice. And it's that spinning wheel that keeps us on that track. I'm opening with that this week because this week is the top of that wheel, right? We return, we celebrate the whole movement before we start over. And it should thus be a day of celebration. As we approach the end of our normal year, it might be easy to feel tired or run down, or excited for the upcoming holiday season, but overwhelmed with how much there is to do for that, But as you heard in the readings and the prayers, today is a day of thanksgiving, a day for celebrating the kingdom to which we belong and the one who leads us into that kingdom. It's a day to celebrate and be encouraged by the future that is on its way. And it's a day to be challenged and strengthened as we continue down that journey of following Jesus. And in this way, it's both the right ending to the liturgical year, the proper ending, and the right beginning as we expectantly begin to move through the cycle again next week. Candles and all. So today's sermon, I hope, will be just that, an encouragement, a celebration, and a challenge. The psalm and the passage from Ezekiel that you heard read, they both speak of God as shepherd. In our culture, the word sheep is sometimes used as a derogatory word, right? Describing someone who blindly follows something, doesn't think for themselves, to the detriment of themselves is the implication, right? And so the image of shepherd probably doesn't at first glance seem very appealing either. To hear a psalm that sings, "We are the Lord's sheep," might seem like an undesirable name for ourselves. But the emphasis, of course, is less on the metaphor of the people being sheep than on the activity of God as shepherd. And invoking the idea of shepherd allows the writers, as you heard, to speak of protection from danger, physical sustenance, guidance down the path of life. Psalm 100 also does something really crucial for our understanding of God. It's such a simple song, and that's why it has such an appeal, I think, in culture. It's got a nice rhythm. It's short. For this reason, children memorize it, right? It's often quoted. People get it tattooed on themselves. So it might be easy to miss the fact that we have some mixed metaphors in this psalm. God is both called shepherd and king. Right? It says we are God's sheep, but then it says enter into God's courts. Right? The shepherd king, both the keeper of the sheep and the ruler of the city. And that's actually a crucial point because while God is declared to be ruler, God is not declared to be a ruler who rules out of some kind of need for power. Right? Some kind of emptiness within God's self that has to be proven to God's self by being consumed with his own grandeur. God is not the kind of ruler who puts burdens on people. The kind of king that the psalmist describes is the shepherd king. In fact, the last verse sums it up for us very well. The Lord is good. He's good. Not harsh, not cruel. God's loving kindness endures forever. Or steadfast love is another translation. There is not a time when God's love expires or runs out. The first letter of John concretely explains the reason for this. Right? God is, in fact, love. So may we reject gods who are not love, and may we celebrate and come with gratitude, as the psalm says, before the God of love. Ezekiel's text puts this love into concrete action. What does it mean? What does it look like to love someone? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Psalm 100 is a little vague, of course. It's meant to be. It's poetic. God gives the sheep pasture. Well, I don't eat grass, so it doesn't necessarily mean a lot for me right off the bat. What does provision look like? What does protection look like? The text from Ezekiel 34 begins with God saying, I will search for my sheep, right? They've been scattered. In this context, the hearers of this are no doubt thinking of their current situation. They've been scattered, forced from their homes to live in another city as refugees of war, surrounded by strange customs, deities with which they are not familiar, rituals that have no correspondence to their own experience, language barriers, likely the low esteem in which they are held by the native people around them. And so the promise of being brought out of Babylon and given a fulfilling life once again must have truly been a source of encouragement. I personally don't know what that's like, to have a song like this that I need to sing. But we know people that do. We're surrounded by all kinds of people who have had to leave their homes for the chance of something better, who probably don't feel like they fit in, who feel confused or lost, but they try their best. Yesterday at the Kinship Free Market, this guy came up to us, and it was so like endearing. He was obviously a native Spanish speaker, but he was trying to speak English to us. And it was like, you could tell on his face, he was like, I'm doing a good job. And so I'm like, trying to talk to him too. And then at the end, when he left, he said like, thanks for the food. And he said, excuse me. And he left. And Caleb and I, that just struck us, right? Because technically that makes sense. It's like if a child says, may I be excused from the table, right? But excuse me doesn't mean that, right? Excuse me means like, pardon me, I've done something wrong. I would like your forgiveness, whatever, right? But like, excuse me, and he left. And he was so proud of himself, right? But how long did it take him to get to that point? There's a lot of people who struggle around us. We think of the songs sung, of course, in the antebellum South by the slaves who desired to be given freedom. And knew deep down, I suppose, that they wouldn't be, and so had to cry out in songs about a future, a beautiful glory that awaited them someday. I don't sing a lot of songs like that because I have it pretty good. But can we put ourselves into the place where we could hear Ezekiel's words as something that would give deep meaning, that would unleash a power of hope within people? Ezekiel works with an extended shepherding metaphor. Let me just say this real quick because it just came to my head. This is why black preachers are better than white ones. I don't know if you've ever listened to black preachers, but they're just better. I've been around a lot recently, and I'm like, I'm going to preach like them. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's going to come off so bad, so cheesy, right? Because it's not my lived experience. But there's power in calling for justice and for hope when you've lived through a place that demands it. This is the position of the people to whom Ezekiel's writing. And he tells them, God will gather you all together and feed you and give you good, clean water, lush places to inhabit, and you'll get to lie down. While we may not be able to understand the full weariness of a people forced from their home, I definitely think most of us have longed for someone to just make us lie down. Stop. Stop being frantic. Rest. It is available to you. But then Ezekiel confronts another issue than simply being scattered, right? There's more at play here. And this is where it gets really interesting than just being brought back into home and, they all lived happily ever after. He speaks of other sheep, right? Sheep who aren't just content to eat from the good pasture provided to them by God. No, they have to go trample the other parts of the pasture where the other sheep are eating. They aren't content to just drink of the cool water given to them. They muddy the waters. They stomp around in it with their little sheep hooves, and they muddy it up. Why? The first part of God's sustenance and the way God provides for people is to first provide pasture and then to judge between sheep and sheep, it says. And here we begin to see the metaphor of ruler, of king, sneak back into the shepherding metaphor again. God will stand as arbiter between two kinds of sheep, or between rams and goats, Ezekiel also puts it. And as we may have guessed, the shepherd judges, rules in favor of the ones who don't get to eat. He says between the fat sheep and the lean sheep. And rules in favor of the ones who didn't get to drink. Ezekiel says of God, I will judge between the fat and the lean. Why? Because the fat are the ones who ate what should have gone to the lean sheep. And the lean sheep are lean because they did not have what they needed. Ezekiel describes these fat sheep as shouldering away the weaker ones. Right? He butted them with their horns and threw their, whatever the front part of a sheep is called, into the other sheep. Flank. For this reason, it says the shepherd judge will rule over them. Now, sometimes this language of dividing up kinds of sheep, of ruling in favor of some people and against other people, sounds off-putting, right? Many of us have heard language where we have been told we're the sheep God's going to rule against. What happened to Psalm 100? His steadfast love endures forever. The Lord is good. What happened to the goodness? But it's important to keep in mind that this distinction between good sheep and bad sheep, rams and goats, fat and lean, it arises because one group seeks to harm the other. It's not arbitrary, right? It's not like God just has something against bigger sheep in general, and as soon as they just maybe naturally get bigger, he doesn't like them anymore or something. And it's not like God just has something against people who happen to have more than somebody else. Ezekiel's point is that God is against those who have more because they have ensured that other people have less. That's the problem. If there is enough to go around and some people do not have what they need, there's a problem. Do we get that? If there is enough to go around and some people do not have what they need, then there's a problem. Do I have all the answers to that problem? No, I'm a single person. Is it a problem? Yes. Jesus addresses this same dilemma and uses the same metaphor as Ezekiel in Matthew 25, as we heard. It's a fairly well-known passage. We've worked with it here before. Many of us would say it's one of our favorites. Jesus tells his followers that at some point he will sit on a throne as judge and judge between sheep and goats, right? Clearly trying to bring Ezekiel back to people's minds. But like Jesus does, he puts a little bit of a twist on things, and he brings this matter right into the heart of the life of the community of faith. And in the ultimate shepherding, a very Psalm 100 kind of move, Jesus associates himself with the sheep. Right? It's not just that he's like just the shepherd. He's not just shepherd king now. He's shepherd king sheep. Right? He's part of it. And so the famous pronouncement, goats, you're out of here. And the goats say, whoa, 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 why? What's the problem? And he says, I was sick. You didn't care for me. I was hungry. You didn't feed me. I was in prison unjustly while people made sure my bed was filled in that prison so they could make billions of dollars, and you did nothing for me. I came to you naked, and you didn't clothe me. I was an immigrant in your land, and you didn't give me a home. I was a stranger. And they said, when did any of this happen? If we had seen you in those situations, we most certainly would have helped. And he says, you didn't do it for the least of any of these. Therefore, you didn't do it for me. And the sheep get welcomed. Come find your rest. Here's your pasture. Here's your cool, clean water. And they're like, we didn't even know that this was up for judgment. We didn't even know there was a sheep and a goat. How are we, when did we ever feed you and clothe you and give you aid and make sure that you were not imprisoned unjustly? And Jesus says, when you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. With Ezekiel as our background, then, it's interesting to note the added layers. In Ezekiel, sheep are just sheep. And goats, or the fat sheep, are the ones who oppress or push out the weak sheep. But in Jesus telling, the goats are not those who just ignore or push out the sheep, right? But we have another group, sheep who help other sheep. I think that's noteworthy because perhaps what stands in our way of being good sheep, right, or giving aid to Christ as we see him among the least of these, is in fact our own place of abundance. Could it be that the sheep live and work among the least of these because they were of the least of these? Right? I see this a lot. Many people don't realize the antagonism in our world because we are shielded from it simply by nature of where we live or where we were raised or what we have. Perhaps for some of us to move from more goat-like to more sheep-like, we need to spend some more time with the lean sheep. We need to spend some time with the fact and with the actual people who are hungry. We need to spend some more time with the idea that there are people in prison who should not be. I read an article this past week one which Hope also responded to and with an editorial letter, and it got published. But it was about this, the prison system in Florida is kind of in disrepair. Like almost half the prisons are at critical level or something, right? And there's 3 plans proposed by this third-party group to like repair them. You can do like the moderate plan, the really like aggressive plan, which is a lot more money, right? You know, and so the government's trying to think about which one they want to do to improve the prisons. Band-Aid, build a bunch of new ones, whatever. And there's all these different options and things in the article. It lays out all this stuff. But then at the very end, one line, it's like, and one possible option too is to reduce the number of prisoners by like letting non-violent offenders out sooner. I mean, we could just tack that on at the end of the article in case someone thinks about it, right? I don't know which one they're going to go with. We can pray. We can work. We need to spend some time with the fact that there are people who are sick and cannot have the care that they need. We have to spend some time with the people who are strangers, who feel isolated, feel ostracized, feel outside of any kind of sense of home or family. All the people that Jesus mentions, they really do exist, right? We know this. And he was one of them when he lived. And he lives among them now. And so we follow our good shepherd king where he leads, because that is the path of rest and pasture. But that's not our natural way of thinking. It's helpful to admit that. That's why Ephesians chapter 1, we didn't hear it read, but it was in today's lectionary selections, opens with the author calling the listeners to pray constantly for wisdom, for revelation, being revealed, right, and enlightenment. Those terms often get spoken of in popular culture pretty often, but it might make us think of ascendance, being lifted above the problems of our world, right? Maybe some kind of spiritual prominence. But for the Pauline communities, wisdom, enlightenment, revelation, they mean a realization of what is real in our world. Not just the call of the glittering glamour of the things that seek to attract us, wealth, power, greatness, right? But no, waking up to the call of the shepherd king that leads all of us to a world where we can find rest, peace. Ephesians chapter 1 confronts us with the call to keep enlightened eyes open, to watch for the hope of our inheritance, Paul says. That inheritance, that thing that is given to us from our place in the family, is a world made right. And then he says, and this is the most beautiful thing, that we have the power to do this. And Paul actually says, we have, in our community, when we get together, he says, the very power of God that rests within us. That's amazing. That's quite a journey to take, right? The promise of Ezekiel that God will move throughout the world, finding the lean sheep, gathering together, judging in their favor, giving them rest. We hear from Jesus saying it is our responsibility to be sheep who care for other sheep and thus care for him. And then Paul takes it all the way by saying that the very divine task, this very movement of God in the world and the power that achieves it lies within us. He even calls the church the completion of Christ. That's the life we live and the path we walk. As we come to the end of our church year, we celebrate the movements that we have made, the forward motion that we have taken on that wheel towards the kingdom of God. Last year at the Hope Nehemiah Action, we had 48 people. We brought 48 people. At that time, that was more than our average weekly attendance, although that number is beginning to shift upwards as well. And that's an amazing thing, right? It's our people power, as Amelia pointed out, that brings the change that's demanded of us by love. Brings it to our community. And we're doing it. We're doing it. And while this year saw some disheartening setbacks, especially around affordable housing, we know we're on our way to that beloved community. And that happens through your loving efforts. We added a new member to the Hope leadership team. Amelia, our excitement, our involvement have already grown, and we will continue to grow in those things with Dustra's and Amelia's efforts in leading us into the work of justice. This year, the Well, through its Well-Fed Kinship Market, distributed 170,000 pounds of food. Yeah, go ahead. Clap. 170,000 pounds to those who need it. And this community plays a big part in that. Where does a lot of the organization and planning occur? Well, here, a lot of the time, in the Wells offices. Those trucks that are parked out back, the ones that pick up and take the food where it goes, right? They stay here. We host one of the kinships here at the building every Monday night. Debbie, Matt, myself. We're here twice a month for that. Tyler and Keith step up to fill in for us when we can't. Caleb picks up food on Fridays from the donation sources. Emily and Caleb run the fourth Saturday kinship market. Michael does a ton of work, right, on the Wells new bus, on really, really important but forgotten things like where's all the trash going to go? And of course, the most obvious direct connection on staff with the Well and the one who directs the whole kinship program is Mary. Right? The ties are close, and our efforts are moving us towards the future we've glimpsed. And you know what? Even if they're not, we're being faithful to Matthew 25. We don't have to figure out whether or not we've solved the problem. We have to be faithful. Those are just two examples. There's so many things that we have done over this past year that are so worthy of celebrating, that are so evoking of our gratitude. The way we've come together to support each other, right? The way that Debbie reminds us that we love each other through remembering our birthdays and giving us cards when sad things happen. The way that we lean on each other emotionally. The way that through conversations, meeting together casually, we know people have our back. We are on the path, right? Embrace that, celebrate it. Don't think we're not. Don't think we're by any stretch failing. There's no sense in which we are failing. But can we continue with our efforts towards moving towards this future? Can we continue to embrace the kind of ruler that the Shepherd King is? The one who cares for the most vulnerable? Who rules? Not from the position above as a removed potentate, but through the very actions of us. I think that's the most wonderful kind of ruler. I agree with Paul that this is the only king who is truly worthy of honor. All of the rest are cheap imitations. All of the calls to anything else rather than loving service, connective community out of love, it's all cheap. It will all fall apart. And even more than fall apart, it will lead us to destruction. And so we honor our king today, not just by saying it as we've seen. That's what the goats did, remember? Do you remember that? We said you were king. We said, yeah, praise Jesus. And he's like, I've never heard of you. I don't know who any of you are, and you hurt all the sheep. But that's not us, right? We can look and we can say, yeah, we've been called into this kingdom, and we've pursued it, and we will continue to pursue it. We honor our king by being his body in the world, by caring for the least of those in the kingdom. We honor our king by imitating our king. We honor and follow our king in a life that forsakes the pursuit of glory, but pursues a life as sheep among sheep. By sheep, for sheep. This is the path of life. Our call is to walk it together. And that is good news for us. Let's pray. God, we ask that we continue to be enlightened, that the light of your love shines into our hearts and awakens us to even new realities, ones we haven't seen before, new ways of service, new ways of love, people that have been pushed into the corners of even our own hearts. We ask that illumination would flood through our community and that we can embrace together the care and concern for those among whom you find yourself. Give us imagination, creativity, flexibility. May we move towards your kingdom together. Amen. On the night that Jesus was to be handed over to the authorities, ultimately to be sentenced to death, of course, he took bread, celebrated with his disciples. They probably talked about all the stuff they had done the last week and the last year, 3 years, right? The things they had done together, all the healing they had seen, all the people made whole, all the people that had been given joy. And they broke this bread together, and Jesus said, this bread that we are so thankful for, that is just given to us by God for sustenance, see how I'm breaking it? That's what's going to happen to me tonight. A shocking statement that did shock his disciples. In the same way, he took wine, the beverage of mirth, and he said, this wine is my blood, poured out as I pour it out. And he said, this is done for the remission of sins, like the release of sin, from sin. That's a sobering thing to tell your disciples. It doesn't seem like something you want to talk about at dinner. And yet Jesus was calling them into something greater, into a greater kind of life. And he said, as often as you take this bread and wine from now on, do it in remembrance of me. Bring this night back into your memory. Bring my life back into your memory. Not just to fondly contemplate, but bring my life back into your very life. Embody the things we did together. Carry them forward. I will not be here much longer, but I will be here among you. That is what we bear witness to every time we do this. We take the body, we take the blood. Why? As a symbol of saying, Christ's life is our life. We live that life. I was raised to think of this as a time when you look at your personal moral failings, add them up, feel really guilty about it. If you don't feel quite guilty enough about it, you shouldn't eat this and you shouldn't drink this. That came from a text that said, do not eat or drink the Lord's table unworthily. Right? If you're unworthy, don't eat or drink it. Paul did say that. Do you know what made someone unworthy in that context? If they got all the food, all the bread, and all the wine, and some people didn't get some of the bread and wine. It's the same thing as Matthew 25. Right? So we come to this table seeking to be worthy, not in the sense of earning God's favor, not in the sense of trading some good work for divine grace. No, but saying yeah, we commit to this. We commit to everybody eating. We commit to everybody sharing. We commit to everybody finding life. And that's why we take this. So dwell on these things as we partake together. May they be real for you.